The page now. Talk Southern Miss with Luke Johnson of the Eagle Hour on the Farm Bureau guest line. Check out favorites.com and go with the home team. So, Luke, before we go big picture stuff, your thoughts on the game this past Saturday and how it shook out.
Yeah, guys, another one that Southern Miss didn't take advantage of opportunities. Ty Mims returned a punt for a touchdown and returned another punt for a touchdown and was called, said he had a fair catch, and that would have put the Eagles up even more. They get inside the 10-yard line 3 different times, only get 6 points out of it. Still had an opportunity to win it on 4th and goal from the 2. Frank Gore Jr. comes up about half a yard short, and it's just kind of the same song, different verse last couple of weeks. You give up a few good plays, but the defense played really, really well against the Old Dominion team that scored a lot on Marshall and beat Louisiana. And, they limited them to 17 points. And, again, the third week in a row, late in the ball game, you got an opportunity to win, and you just can't come up with it.
So we've been talking about head coaches with their backgrounds. And when you have a defensive-minded head coach, you expect to be really good and sound on defense. Take the Saints. So you got the hat on. The Saints are really good defensively, and they should be because Dennis Allen's their head coach. Ole Miss has although this year it hadn't been perfect always, a reputation for being a great offensive football team because Lane Kiffin's their head coach. Mississippi State fans expected to be a really good defensive football team. It hasn't worked out that way, but they've expected that because of who Zach Arnett is. Why is Southern Miss unable to generate offense at this moment?
Well, the last 2 weeks have been the best 2 weeks, under Will Hall offensively from a yardage and point standpoint. And then, this past Saturday, they tried to reshuffle the offensive line. And when you look back at what they did in the portal, offensive line is really one of the main positions that they didn't overhaul or bring in a lot of guys. They did get Gabe Cavazos from Mississippi State. He started at left tackle. And they took Bryson Mays and moved him over to right tackle. And those two guys probably had the best couple games. The problem is they're just not getting much on the inside of the line. Old Dominion played a light box, dropped 8, and still couldn't find ways, to get Frank Gore Jr. going. And so I think it's a combination of not being able to score in the red zone. Eagles are only 11 of 25 on the year scoring touchdowns inside the red zone, and just kind of worst possible things to happen at worst possible moments. And so that's the issue. I mean, a lot of talk, about some of the play calls. You see what they're trying to do. You understand the scheme. They're just not executing.
So for you, is it more scheme? Is it more players? Is it more bad luck? It doesn't seem to be injuries this time around that it's been in the past for USM. It feels like there's, it's sort of a potluck supper of bad conditions here, but what's the main course? Where are we looking at and putting the most blame?
Well, when you got a potluck supper, y'all know about this, you got about 3 or 4 entrees. So it's just kind of everything, together. And I would say the last 3 weeks have been just unfortunate situations. I mean, you give against Arkansas State and against Texas State, you give an offense 5 or 6 short fields, and that's how you lose the ball game. Just little things like they get inside the 10, but it's 1st and goal at the 10-yard line. You don't get a run, you miss a wide open receiver, and so 3rd and 9, you run a jet sweep to try to ISO a safety, and you get dropped for a 5-yard loss, and you kick a field goal. It has just been not being able to get the right play at the right time. Defensively, they gave up 3 explosive plays, and 17 points should win it for you, especially against Old Dominion, who's been averaging more than that. So yeah, I mean, kind of to ask your question, it's 3 or 4 things every week that has just kind of doomed this football team through the first half of the season. And there is a lot of chatter out there, and a lot of people are wondering, if Southern Miss made a bad decision. I say this: they're better at quarterback than they've ever been. You have an elite running back, you just cannot get him in opportunities. They tried a lot of different blocking schemes this past week. First time they've done all year with several things, and just again couldn't get anything going.
Up here in Starkville, we're looking at the State's going into its off week, and the second half of the schedule is a little bit lighter. The best team you have left to play is probably the last game of the season, which is the crazy one where anything can happen. For USM, they don't have they're off this Saturday, but they play on Tuesday, a big game against South Alabama. Then they're off. But the back end of that schedule is tough. Aside from the game with Mississippi State, there's still App State, there's still Troy. Can Southern Miss put together a second-half turnaround, in your opinion?
They're going to have to play a whole lot better, and they're going to have to get a few breaks at the right time. I did feel like they had the most energy defensively that they've had all year. And again, I mean, we're still talking. This is Old Dominion. Like some of these teams I've been losing to weren't playing FBS football when I was playing high school football. So yeah, I hate to be saying that, obviously, but that's where you are. A pretty cool story, and I think it added to some of the energy. Avery Hobbs got back significant minutes. He had 2 sacks in the game. They did start better. They had a lot more energy defensively. But to your point, I mean, if you don't see, something crazy good a week from today, you have no reason to think that, they could. The only game really they have a chance in on paper right now against ULM. So, yeah, they've got to show a whole lot better. They've got to, give Wiles more time, and they have to. If they are able to run the football at all, I think this will be a different team in the second half. There's just nothing right now except for, opportunities where you kick yourself and you wonder what might have been. You got to take advantage of those, or we'll continue to see the same thing.
So you mentioned that they've played close games, and that is absolutely a factor. But nobody saw this coming. And we had somebody ask us yesterday on the text line if there's fear of not necessarily losing the locker room, but a locker room that isn't buying what is being sold. Is there any sign of that at all?
I don't think that at all. And I think the fact that your team, at least, vocally and publicly in pressers and other things, you have a strong leadership on this team. And I think what it does is it speaks to the culture that Will Hall's built in, being here for 3 years, because you don't have dudes jumping ship. You have 2 games that you possibly could have won, and you come back and, you lose by 4, but you're in it to the very end. I mean, really, like the last 3 weeks, they've come down to the last offensive possession of the game. And you say, with everything that went wrong, that they could have taken advantage of, that they didn't take advantage of, you still have the opportunity to win 3 football games that you didn't. I think that speaks to they are buying what he has put out there, and I think they continue to believe in it. And, just back to ADAD, I think that gives you hope that they might win 1 or 2 down the stretch that they may not be figured to win right now.
And we have been asked a couple of times just to relay those messages. There's no actual reality behind the possibility of, if it continues down this path, making a change after 2023.
I don't see it. Jeremy McClain, last week put out that statement, and I think I may have shared this with you guys. I may not have. He just said he added that opening paragraph because he was already cooking up that statement, to relay kind of condition of the athletic department, some exciting changes they're making. And so he just wanted to address the frustration. So, yeah, that statement last week, nobody's on notice, no hot seat. I don't see them, making a change unless something just pretty wild happened and, you see where you've lost the team or lost the culture, and that's not it right now.
Only got about a minute or so left, Will, but I'm sorry, Luke. I got Rogers on the brain here. I got 2 things going on. My apologies. Thinking of Will Hall too, but no change at the big position. What about coordinators, staff changes, or is Southern Miss going to try to see this through and into next year with the whole staff?
Yeah, I think probably everything's on the table after the season. Sam Gregg's the offensive coordinator, but obviously Will Hall's the play caller. So I think everything's got to be looked at. When you have a season that doesn't turn out a season with expectation like this, you got to be willing to make the changes. And I feel like Will is too good a football mind and too much of a realist to ignore that. And I hope they will revisit whatever needs to be revisited going forward.
Luke, thanks a lot for your time, man. Maybe they'll win some down the stretch, and all of the things that were just talked about will be